It begins in stillness, not silence, for Egypt is never truly silent, but a stillness that listens. Somewhere beyond the dunes, the Nile glows faintly, silver in the dying light. The air is thick with some resin and smoke. Inside, a narrow chamber carved into the rock. A small flame trembles on the edge of a copper bowl. Around it, 5 men move slowly, faces half covered, their linen robes rustling against stone. They speak in whispers, each motion measured, each sound deliberate. The air smells of salt and cedar, of oil warmed by breath. On the slab before them lies the form of a man, once living, now waiting to be made eternal. One priest dips his finger into the jar of natron, its grain hissing faintly as they meet the moist air. Another traces a symbol over the chest, murmuring the words of protection. Somewhere in the corner, a bowl of incense burns, and the smoke curls upward, carrying prayers to the gods who govern the gates of death. Outside, the sun sinks below the cliffs of the west. The color drains from the valley until only the torches glow. A small, fragile suns in a world of shadows. The air grows colder, the wind sharper. Yet, inside the chamber, the work continues, unhurried and precise. For this is not death, not truly. This is transformation. And those who perform it do so not as mortals handling flesh, but as servants of eternity, keeping the fragile bridge between life and the next world intact. To the Egyptians, the body was not merely a shell, it was the house of Ka, the life force that breathed, moved, and remembered. When a person died, that essence did not vanish, it wandered, seeking its home. For the soul to survive, the house had to remain. Every limb, every line of face mattered. So the embalmers became architects of immortality. Their crafts was not born of curiosity, but necessity. The desert, with its dry breath, had shown them what the sun could do, how fresh left beneath the sand could last, hardening, drying, holding the outline of what once lived. They saw nature preserved and sought to improve it, to make preservation deliberate. Each act had purpose: the washing of the body, purification, the removal of organs, release of corruption, the salting with natron, a cleansing that imitated the desert's own. Nothing was random. It was theology made tactile, a belief system written on the skin. There was reverence in the taking apart. The embalmer spoke to the dead as they worked, reassuring the spirit that it would be restored. The brain was removed through the nose, an act of precision, done not with brutality but respect. The liver, lungs, stomach, and intestines were each lifted carefully, rinsed in palm wine, wrapped and sealed within their canopic jars. Each jar bore a guardian, a god who watched over that organ's eternal rest. Imseti, the human-headed protector of the liver, Happy, baboon-faced, who watched the lungs. Duamutef, jackal-headed, who guarded the stomach. Kebesenwef, falcon-headed, who kept the intestines safe. The heart alone remained, for it was not simply an organ, it was the seat of thought, of emotion, of identity. In the afterlife, it would be weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the truth itself. To lose the heart was to lose oneself. Those who practiced embalming were more than technicians. They were priests, servants of Anubis, the jackal god who walked between the living and the dead. They wore his mask not for decoration, but for transformation, believing that when they placed it upon their heads, they spoke and acted as him. Within the walls of Wabet, the pure place, every motion was ritualized. Words was chanted as the resin sealed the flesh. Prayers murmured as linen strips crossed each other in perfect symmetry. They believed that to err was to wound eternity itself. For them, time had a pulse that did not end. They worked not for days or weeks, but for 40, 70, sometimes 100 days, until the body no longer belonged to decay, but to preservation. In that patient devotion lay their genius. The air inside the embalming house was heavy with scent, myrrh, frankincense, cedar oil, cinnamon bark, beeswax melting in small clay pots. These were not just perfumes, they were protection. Each carried a spirit, a prayer, a defense against what was unseen. The priest moved through the fog of incense like a figures in a dream, hands licked with oil, fingers dusted with powdered resins. They whispered the names of the herbs as they worked, believing that sound itself carried magic, that to speak Cedar's name was to awaken its guarding spirit. Outside, the villagers could smell the work from afar, a sharp sweetness that clung to air and memory. To them, it was not unpleasant, it was sacred, a sign that someone was being prepared to meet the gods. Natron, the salt of the dry lakes, was the desert's secret gift. It absorbed moisture, drew decay out of flesh, and left only purity. The embalmers packed it carefully around the body, layer upon layer, until the person seemed encased in light-colored snow. For 40 days it rested. The chamber was kept dim, the air cool. Priests would visit, checking the salt, whispering to the soul that lingered near. They said that during those 40 days, the spirit hovered, neither here nor there, waiting for its body to become fit again for eternity. When the time came, the natron was brushed away, revealing skin dry and intact, smooth like parchment. The transformation had begun, from mortal to monument. Far from the tombs, women in the villages worked the looms. Their task was to weave the linens, pure, unblemished, spun from flax harvested along the Nile. They washed it in the river water, bleached it under sun, and sang as they worked. They did not see the faces of the dead they clothed, but they knew their names. Each bolt of linen carried a blessing. May your body endure, may your name remain. When the priests came to collect it, they bowed slightly, for even thread was sacred when it wrapped eternity. In the embalming house, each strip was measured, cut, anointed with oils, layer after layer. Hundreds of feet of the linen enclosed the form, every fold a prayer. Bronze hooks, obsidian knives, small scoops of ivory. The tools of the embalmers were quiet, things polished smooth from use. They were washed before and after every ritual, laid out on clean cloth, their edges shining faintly in torchlight. Nothing was wasted. Every cut had meaning, every motion a verse in an unspoken hymn. To outsiders, it may have seemed cold, mechanical, but to those within the chamber, it was an act of faith so intimate it bordered on love. Even the smallest gesture, the tying of a band, the sealing of a jar, was believed to echo in eternity. Outside the pure place, families gathered. They brought offerings of bread, beer, flowers, amulets shaped like eyes and scarabs. For them, the 70 days of mummification were both mourning and preparation. Each day, they visited the temple steps, whispering prayers to Anubis, to Osiris, to Hathor who welcomed souls. Children asked questions. Where had their father gone? Was he sleeping? Their mothers told them, he is being made ready. He is being made whole again. When the day of return came, when the priests brought out the linen-wrapped figure, the wails rose like wind over the sand. But within that sorrow was pride. Their loved one would live forever. The embalmers worked beside sculptors, painters, goldsmiths, for the body was only one part of the preparation. The tomb was its companion. Walls were painted with scenes of life, of journeys, of fields of reeds where the soul could walk again. Amulets were placed among the bandages, tiny spells of protection. The eyes of Horus over the heart, the scarab beetle over the navel, the dyed pillar at the spine, symbol of stability. Each item told a story. Each layer was a sentence in the long text of remembrance. The body became a library of prayers, bound in linen and resin. Even the animals had their ways. Cats, ibises, crocodiles, even sacred bulls were mummified with the same care as kings. Each was a messenger of its god. Bastet, Thoth, Sobek, Apis. Their wrappings were finer than silk, their eyes inlaid with stone, their coffins carved with devotion. The priests who tended them believed that these creatures carried fragments of divine spirit. To preserve them was to preserve divinity itself. In the great catacombs beneath Saqqara, thousands of such mummies rest, a silent bestiary of faith. Beyond the temple walls, life continued. Traders sold natron, incense, oils, fine linens, small idols of Anubis. The art of embalming fed a network of craftsmen, potters, carvers, weavers, perfumers. The city thrived on death, not on morbidity, but reverently. Death was not an end, but an economy of eternity. Even the poorest could buy a modest preservation, a few days of drying, a shroud, a prayer. Children grew up knowing the steps of the process, not with fear but with respect. In Egypt, death had no sting. It was simply another phase of life, a preparation for the journey ahead. When the final wrapping was done, when the mask of gold or painted plaster was placed, when the name was spoken one last time, the embalmers stepped back. The chamber fell quiet, except for the soft hiss of oil lamps. They bowed to the figure, not as to a corpse, but as to one reborn, for they believed that at that very moment, the car returned, drawn by recognition of its perfect vessel. Outside, the procession began. Music of sistrums and drums, chanting that echoed off the cliffs. The west, land of the setting sun, awaited. Inside the tomb, offerings were arranged: bread, wine, honey, figs, and jars of beer. Furniture, jewels, and letters written by family members were placed beside a sarcophagus. The priest sealed the door with wax and clay, marking it with a sign of protection. The air grew still, heavy with the weight of finality. The torches dimmed, the last voice faded, and then nothing, only silence, broken by the slow settling of dust. Centuries passed, Dynasties fell, sand swallowed cities, yet their art endured. The faces they preserved still look back at us across 4,000 years. Lips, eyelashes, even skin unbroken. Science now studies what fate once guided, but the mystery remains. They were not preserving bodies but memory, and memory, when wrapped in reverence, does not decay. The lamps grow dim, the chamber cools, the priests depart. All that remains is breath caught in resin, a whisper sealed beneath a stone. The body sleeps, but the name endures. The gods have received what was theirs. Outside, the desert exhales, soft, endless, patient. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the stars rise over the western hills, and Egypt dreams of eternity once more. And now, you are at rest.